Israel, the land of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. The birthplace of Jesus. The center of all biblical parables. But behind these stories there are complex and very difficult bloody confrontations. Jews on the one hand and the Arab world on the other. Israel is the only country surrounded by enemies on all sides. It so happened that the Jews had to build their country and develop in a situation of constant tension, war, terror and all the troubles. On the one hand, such circumstances made life much more difficult for Jews. On the other hand, they helped them become stronger and more resilient. This country's special services are considered among the world's most powerful. The most famous of them, of course, is the Mossad. There are legends about them, and the fighters of this department are considered almost national heroes in Israel. This is not the only special services formation in the country. There is another one that specializes exclusively in the fight against terrorism. The guys from this body play the role of special forces, but often take on work as secret police and even punitive squads, but only in relation to terrorists. We are talking about the Centralized Special Unit, or YAMAM for short. The need for such a unit as YAMAM appeared in 1974. Then there was a tragedy called the Malot Massacre. In mid-May, 2 terrorists from the organization, Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, took hostages at a school. On the way to the scene of the crime, they killed 4 more Israelis. The demands were standard, as for the Palestinians at that time, to release their people from Israeli prisons. They could not take such a step in Jerusalem, because the terrorists asked to release not 1, not 2, but more than 20 fighters. At first, they tried to agree, but when the 9-hour negotiations did not bring results, they began an assault. Also unsuccessful. Out of more than 80 hostages, the terrorists managed to shoot more than 20. Children were also among the victims. The operation failed because the Israelis lacked a specialized hostage release unit. The question arises, where were the Mossad soldiers? The answer is simple: the Mossad works on the principle of the CIA. They mostly carry out operations outside the country. And besides, the release of hostages requires the skills of CQB technique, that is, close-range combat. Since Israel did not have such a department, it was decided to create it. And prioritize the fight against terrorists inside the country.
The element of surprise is the key to a successful operation. This is because a terrorist can pull the trigger in a split second. Accordingly, kill hostages.
YAMAM itself is a special unit of the Israeli border police. This formation is not unique. If YAMAM fighters are special forces that play the role of attack aircraft and act only on extremely important missions related to the security of citizens, then in the structure of the country's armed forces there is also such a department as YASAM. They are a kind of specialized police patrols responsible for security on the streets of the country. They do everything like ordinary police officers, but with an emphasis on terrorism. And besides, they mainly control the borders of the state. And there is also YAMAs among the border police fighters. These guys could be called wolves in sheep's clothing. People who are very similar to Arabs are recruited there. They launch them, let's say, into the rear, where the fighters collect the necessary information, observe the mood of Arab society, and, if necessary, can easily twist or eliminate a terrorist. All 3 units usually work together, greatly reducing attackers' chances.
YAMAM is an elite special unit aimed at rescuing hostages. Fighters can do everything and even more than you might think. Imagine James Bond movies becoming a reality. This is how they work in YAMAM. Flexibility, speed of task completion and reaction are all on top.
YAMAM fighters began their first tasks almost immediately after creation. From the mid-70s to the mid-80s, they regularly went on missions. But success was not always achieved. In 1978, Fatah fighters infiltrated Israel and took hostages. Mostly people from cars and buses were captured by terrorists. Hence the name of those events, a terrorist attack on the coastal highway. The fighters, already trained by previous experience, decided not to negotiate with the terrorists. Instead, immediately launch an assault. Out of 11 terrorists, 9 were killed, but the price was too high. 39 Israelis were killed in the shootout. More than 70 were injured. In YAMAM, this operation is neither successful nor a failure. But modern researchers are sure that there was no other result. The terrorists have well fortified their positions. A shootout is the only right way out. And the deaths of 39 civilians helped save dozens of other lives. Otherwise, everyone would die.
YAMAM is an international class counterterrorism unit. In every sense of the word. They free hostages, kidnap and hold prisoners, and so on. They are constantly training to perform their missions well.
The fight against terrorists is what Israel has lived and is living. Geographically and historically, they must constantly fend off Palestinian militant attacks and hide from shelling. Therefore, new units of fighters appear in the country, technologies are constantly being improved. Until the 90s, the seizure of buses and hostages by terrorists was commonplace, especially after the terrorist attack on the coastal highway. Since then, Israeli teams have developed their own methods of freeing prisoners from such places. Practice has shown that an open shootout causes many casualties, so they began to use snipers. Over time, the seizure of buses became less. One of the reasons is the emergence of a special unit that infiltrates Arab society and monitors the mood. He is engaged in bribing citizens and does everything possible to neutralize the enemy even before he makes his way into Israel.
They can walk the streets, dressed like Arabs, or go with Arabs in the same car, bus and talk to them about everyday topics at the same time. It was possible to eavesdrop on conversations about YAMAM. Once the Arabs said among themselves that the soldiers of this unit were deliberately looking for Arabs, killing them, and then throwing the bodies into the roads.
In December 1987, the first Palestinian Intifada began. Palestinians protested against violence and forced evictions by Israelis without the right to return. Large-scale clashes between Arabs and Israelis began. Molotov cocktails and stones were used. The Israeli army and special services confronted the arbitrariness in the streets. The clashes continued until 1991. Then more than 2,000 people died. And almost all of them were Palestinians. The conflict was silenced until it resurfaced in 2000. Those events were called the Second Palestinian Intifada. Protests and battles lasted until 2005 and took 7,000 lives with them. After all, firearms were already used here. While the Israeli military was killing protesters in the streets, YAMAM fighters were tracking down potential terrorists. And then there are two scenarios, either imprisonment or execution on the spot. How many were arrested during the Second Intifada is unknown. Nearly 200 terrorists were killed. During those protests, YAMAM showed themselves as punitive units. Despite criticism from Palestinians, few paid attention to the Israeli tactic. After all, Jerusalem's position was clear: we are fighting terrorists.
This is not the first time that people have tried to destroy Jewish culture. The Romans tried to do this 2,000 years ago. Later, in the 20th century, the Nazis took up this, and they failed.
YAMAM unit selection is not among the world's most difficult. Unlike other special forces, these guys don't disclose how to join. Age is not the main condition for admission. Experience is valued in this formation. Therefore, already elite fighters are being recruited into the ranks of YAMAM. Training takes place without the so-called elementary or basic skills of candidates. People who come to the unit already know all the nuances. They will be waiting for the selection stage and training, where shooting and the ability to think creatively are a priority. In such counter-terrorist units, there is only one task: to eliminate the terrorist as quickly as possible and without harm to others.
Candidates who want to get into the special forces must have excellent and extraordinary skills. Only 1% of those who wish to remain will do so. That is, only one person is hired in the department.
While training methods remain secret, unit members are known to specialize as engineers, technicians, dog handlers, attack aircraft, and snipers. The last two directions are among the most important in YAMAM. It is on their shoulders that the success of the operation lies. The task of attack aircraft is to return any terrorist scenario in their favor as quickly as possible. While snipers are responsible for the safety of unit members and at the same time wait for intruders. The effective work of snipers is the key to a successfully completed task. By the way, there is a place for marksmen in the sniper brigade. These are fighters who can both shoot at long distances and enter the assault brigade, simultaneously operating with both a machine gun and a rifle. Marksmen are a very effective combat unit, especially when it comes to the aforementioned CQB. Especially for short-range combat, YAMAM adheres to not a new, but very effective method of fighting. There is only one rule in it:
Fighters are trained so that they attack even when they are defending. In other words, they go to great lengths to win.
YAMAM's arsenal includes various weapons, with ultrasound being the most common for close-range fights. It is lightweight, has good accuracy, and is short enough to allow you to hide behind walls and shelters. Moreover, it is so balanced that you can shoot it with one hand. Just like in action movies. A person with shooting skills and the ability to control weapons can easily cope with such a task as one-handed shots. Not to mention a well-trained special forces fighter. The list of weapons also includes sniper rifles with a wide variety of modern sights. Money for combat tools is not spared in Israel. When you constantly have to deal with such a phenomenon as terrorism, you need to provide the formation with the best possible equipment. Not to mention armored vehicles. By the way, when something from their own arsenal is not enough to complete the task, YAMAM uses the services of other departments. Coordinated interaction between all special agencies of the country ensures an effective result during counter-terrorist operations.
Their tactics are simple. The idea is that to create controlled chaos, you need to be very fast and attentive. There are many hostages, so you can't randomly shoot and hope to hit the terrorist. The task is to send the bullet clearly to the target.
Surgical operations are just what you and I see. Imagining the thorough training required for a successful mission is difficult. It does not always happen that any particular operation is assigned only to YAMAM members. It's an integrated approach where everyone plays their own role. Intelligence is collecting information, YAMAM fighters are planning an attack, YAMA's fighters are patrolling the territory and covering the rear. If necessary, the army will also help. Israeli units operate as one organism for citizen security. When you are surrounded by enemies on all sides, there is no room for error, because the enemy will use any opportunity to strike. Interestingly, in all its operations, YAMAM adheres to the tactics of the Mossad. They do not talk about success during tasks. They also do not mention failures. Thanks to this, they can keep any of their plans secret. Instead, the Israelis are happy to share their experience with other special services of the world. One of their closest colleagues in spirit is the German GSG-9, with whom they regularly conduct joint exercises.
YAMAM is a very professional and unique unit. They were able to develop tactics and techniques that are still used by many other units today.
The Israeli YAMAM always stands guard over the safety of its citizens. Clashing with terrorists is what they live for, and the fighters are ready for such meetings 24/7. We are unlikely to learn about their work methods, operations, successes, failures, and possibly crimes soon. As long as Israel is surrounded by enemies, it is very dangerous to say anything in public, much less about its commanders. However, residents of the country can be 100% sure that as long as such special services are on guard of Israel, they can sleep peacefully.